After suspending funding to UNRWA, the UN agency that helps Palestinians, Canada is instead sending $40 million dollars in aid to other organizations that support civilians in Gaza. The money is being diverted to the World Food Program, UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and the International Committee of the Red Cross. But new reporting from late last week showed that Canada had already sent $48 million dollars to UNRWA when the funding pause was announced. Joining us now to discuss the latest on Canada's funding of UNRWA is Bryan Passifume, Parliamentary Bureau reporter for the National Post. Bryan, thank you very much for being back with us on Forum Daily.
Always happy to.
So, with the latest allegations of UNRWA employees participating in the October 7th terrorist attack, I think a lot of Canadians are concerned about what you've reported here. In your conversations with Global Affairs, what has the 48 or what will the $48 million dollars be used for?
Well, I think most people were pleased to hear that Canada had decided to stop funding UNRWA. I think that there was concerns for years, sometimes even decades, depending on how far back you go, on issues surrounding some of the ties that some UNRWA employees in the West Bank and Gaza have to extremist groups like Hamas.
Mhm.
Like for example, the 48 million that was sent, that it was a little tough getting that information. The government was very quick to sort of pat themselves on the back for doing that. But shortly after the announcement came of the funding pause, there were some questions about when exactly there was, when exactly the money was, how much money had been sent prior to like earlier this year, Canada had announced $100 million over 4 years to go towards UNRWA in their
Mhm.
programs. Unfortunately, I guess the first installment of that money had already been sent by the time Canada announced their funding pause. Global Affairs Canada told me that, in fact, Canada had already sent $48 million so far in the 2023 fiscal year, which ends in
Yeah.
next month, to UNRWA.
Was there any interest in the part of Ottawa to revoke the funds that they had sent, or was that even an option?
Uh, no, right in the statement that I got from Global Affairs Canada, they specifically stated that that money ostensibly sent to for humanitarian purposes will not be called back. So whatever money it was sent is gone. That the government has no interest in asking for any of it back.
Are there any other countries who are maybe caught in this similar position where the funds had already been sent, but they've now, in response to the allegations, cut off future funding? Are other countries in the same boat as us?
Probably the biggest. There's been a lot of questions about the United States.
Mhm.
They were the country that got this whole ball rolling with their announcement that they were halting funding, and a lot of the same questions came up. What exactly does a halt of funding mean when the bulk of the promised money had already been sent? So yeah, it's there are some questions about sort of how much teeth this effort has. Is it more demonstrative than actually halting funding terror groups
Yeah.
in the West Bank and Gaza?
Now, Canada hasn't always funded UNRWA. Can you walk us through when Canada stopped funding this agency and when that funding was brought back? Because it's important that you made reference to concerns that stretch back possibly decades here. When were or were we not funding this organization?
Yeah, Canada had stopped funding UNRWA back 2010 under the administration of the previous Prime Minister Stephen Harper. There were concerns that that money going to UNRWA was actually funding Hamas and terrorism,
Mhm.
and that Canada stopped funding them largely until 2016, when current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that he would be restoring full funding to UNRWA.
And was there any response in terms of the renewal of that funding? Was there any response to the criticism? Because obviously the Harper government cut UNRWA's funding for the reasons you just mentioned.
Mhm.
Was there an effort by Ottawa under Prime Minister Trudeau to address some of those concerns as to why Canada had removed funding under Harper?
It's thinking back to those times. It really is hard to say. I think that there was a lot of calls to reinstate the funding after it was
Mhm.
cut, and it seems that the prime minister decided to listen to those calls, and I guess in their administration they figured that funding money was more important than the concerns that have been established about what UNRWA does in that area.
Bryan, thank you very much for your time today.
Happy to anytime.